Well, continuing on as we transition from the commandments that are about God to the commandments that are about our relationships with one another, we start with the command to honor our father and mother. And why do you think that that's where this starts?
The next hierarchy down, I mean, it's a kind of a natural progression, I think, in some ways.
I think your mom and your dad are the ones who are kind of responsible for instilling everything of value in your life, and so if you don't honor them first, then you won't honor anything they deliver to you.
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. And I think that one of the things that's really fascinating is God uses, father as a way of understanding who he is. And there's a reason for that. And I think, what you talked about there about this, it's kind of the most immediate hierarchy. It's the one that has the closest bonds. It's the one that, is with us all the time as we're growing. There's kings and their people. There's all kinds of different hierarchies. There's a master and his servants, but those don't come as close in proximity as a father and his children to what God is to us. And so the relationship with parents is really important, and it's kind of the starting point for how we're going to interact with the world, and it's a starting point with whether or not we're really going to be successful in the world.
I think the place I've most commonly seen it is just in terms of, you kind of hit it, is when yelling and anger are commonly displayed between father and son, or mother and son, or mother daughter, father daughter. That often displays itself in just every other interaction in life for that child. It's pretty common, and it's not that it's something that can't be unlearned or something like this, but it's often not recognized as something that needs to be unlearned. The crux of the issue is authority. Like, if the immediate authority in your life, if that relationship is strained, you may carry that throughout the rest of your life with bosses and government and God at the top and all of it.
Yeah, you start to see the problem is that they are the embodiment of that hierarchy, and you either see that as coming from love or you see it as coming from hatred. Yeah. And if you see it as coming from hatred, and that's the way that you respond to that authority in your life, from there we take a big jump to not murdering. And obviously we could say that not a lot needs to be said about that because it seems fairly obvious. And one of the things that was interesting is listening to Richard Dawkins talk about this. He was like, it's so obvious it doesn't need to be stated, kind of thing. What do you think about the idea that not murdering is so obvious it doesn't need to be stated?
I think if you've grown up in a Western culture it's been very Christianified, if you will, and stuff like that, I think you can come away thinking that's just innate and obvious, and you can say, well, everybody's just good people, and have those kind of views, but read a lot of history, pre-Western history and things of this sort, and I think you might be rebuffed in that opinion.
Right. All right. So number 7 is the commandment against adultery, and so why would that be in the top 10? Why would that make the top 10 of things what ought not to be done?
You talked about honoring your father and mother and how God uses that relationship to describe himself and stuff like that. Well, maybe just as often, if not more, he also describes his relationship to his people as that of a husband and wife. And so he's, pointing special relationship or special care to that relationship as well.
Yeah. We're told a lot of times in especially in politics that, if a politician has a history of philandering, that's not really that big of a deal, and that shouldn't really enter into our decision on whether we should make them president or not. What do you see as the problem with that kind of reasoning?
Well, if the supposed most important relationship in the case of a man with his wife is void, what can he be faithful in?
Right.
I mean, if I'm not faithful to my wife, will I be faithful to any other person?
Yeah, the idea that somehow he doesn't mind cheating on his wife, but he'll never break his
Where's
word
the
to
line,
the
then?
people.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah, it seems fairly obviously problematic. Then we have 8, thou shalt not steal. So what are we looking at here as far as understanding? There's a pattern here that's kind of emerging to these commandments, and what is it? What's the problem with theft exactly? If you have a whole bunch and I don't have any, why can't I steal from you? Because that's kind of the way that, I mean, really, there's a whole economic system based on exactly not following this commandment.
Sure.
There's a whole system of incentives that come into play if you have a society where theft is just rampant, and you can't count on holding on to things and things of this sort, and the incentives it creates in society are just disastrous. So obviously you could say from a societal standpoint this is vital, but it's also kind of a slander against God, who's supposed to be taking care of you, that I'm going to go steal because I'm not satisfied with what God has given me.
Yeah, we go then to number 9, which is bearing false witness or lying. And obviously, you're going to create all kinds of social havoc if that's not followed, at least to a large extent. Imagine a situation where just nobody could be trusted, and there's no social cohesion, there's no social trust. I mean, societies and communities are built on trust. It's very interesting to me that one of the things that you see happening in the modern world is the idea that trust really isn't that big of a deal. The idea that there really is no truth and that kind of thing. And yet, I think that there's an argument that can be made that it's the fundamental commodity is truth, and that without it, there is no moving forward. There's no building a society. There's no anything. And so, what do you guys make of number 9, that you shouldn't lie? Does that seem like should be second to the last to you?
I mean, in light of what you just said, it does seem like it warrants potentially being higher, and it applies to every relationship that you have, not just specific ones and things of the sort. But that is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Whenever somebody lies to us, it's the most egregious thing ever. But I have no compunction of lying to other people, and when I'm caught out, it was just not a big deal.
Right.
I mean, you're making more of it than it needs to be, but it is foundational. I mean, and I'm trying to imagine the faith we have in each other, or even just in existence, as you're talking about. I'm thinking, well, I have faith this chair isn't going to collapse on me, and if it does, then either I need to do something about me, or I need to find whoever was responsible.
Yeah.
And I think it colors everything. I mean, it permeates everywhere, and to minimize it is dangerous, or troublesome.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that you can make an argument that really there's an aspect of truth that's built into pretty much all of these commandments, but here we're finally just having it singled out. But I think you could make the argument that there's truth built into everything here.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that we should take the fact that it's second to the last as relevant to its importance. And then finally, not coveting. And what do you make of that? It is kind of interesting that in the top 10, coveting is. It's interesting to me that's made it into the top 10. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've always, these last 3, don't steal, no false witness, and no coveting, they really intersect and cover each other a lot, but then I think they all kind of do that as well, and not just the last three. But there's something about these last three. I don't know if I've got my eye on it or handle on it yet.
Well, I look at this last one, and we talked earlier about loving your neighbor as yourself is kind of a summary. And if I am loving my neighbor, which means I am desirous of their good. And here's saying, it's going to be hard to be desirous of their good if you're being desirous of their good things at the same time.
Yeah, there's an element, I think, of glory that runs through all of these. And that would make sense because love and glory are closely tied together. If you love something, you ascribe to it glory and you desire for it more glory. And I think that coveting is a way of trying to usurp the glory of something else and make it your own. And lying is an attempt to do this a similar thing, and stealing is. There's a similarity to all of those. It's really about ascribing to God the glory that is due Him, and then not taking from other people the glory that is due them. And that's an interesting thing because we don't. Glory is not something that we talk about all that much, I think, these days, even though it's kind of subtext for everything that happens. But I think that when you look at this list really makes a lot of sense from the standpoint of kind of an ancient worldview of glory being something that's incredibly important, and ascribing to God the glory that's due Him and not taking from others the glory that's due them. And that seems like a negative thing, but there's actually a lot of positivity in that, in the fact that the kind of people that we like to be around are the kind of people who are good at glorifying things and bad at taking glory that doesn't belong to them. Which is an interesting thing. We like being around those kind of people, and those people tend to be successful in their endeavors. So, well, thank you for joining us. We'll see you guys next time. Be sure to read Exodus chapters 24 through 31 about the tabernacle, because that's what we'll be discussing. See you next time.